Today in the episode, Russia attacks Ukraine with Oreshnik, medium-range ballistic missile. Putin is posing as a peacemaker to reject the peace process. Ukrainian forces destroy 8 Russian air defense systems worth $250 million. The terrorist army of the Russian Federation used so-called Oreshnik in Ukraine. The Air Force of the Ukrainian Armed Forces confirmed the strike with a medium-range ballistic missile from the Kapustin Yar test site in Russia. An object of critical infrastructure in the Lviv region was attacked. The Air Force of the Ukrainian Armed Forces reported that this missile was flying at a speed of 13,000 kilometers per hour. And Security Service of Ukraine show the wreckage of Oreshnik. There are the stabilization unit of the missile, spare parts from the engine, and fragments of the orientation mechanism. The Russian Ministry of Defense stated that they had attacked the west of Ukraine with a medium-range ballistic missile Oreshnik as a response on so-called attack of Putin's residence at Lake Valdai. Putin continues his brutal lie because there is no proof of it. Kremlin's lie was confirmed personally by Donald Trump. Before this CIA assessment had concluded that Ukraine did not try to kill Russian dictator Putin at his country residence as alleged by the Kremlin, but actually the aim of the strike was not so-called attack on Putin's residence in Novgorod region with drones last December. Kremlin dictator is crazy about the fact that US has seized 2 tankers of Russian shadow fleet this week. Russian submarine had been pursuing tanker Marinera for more than 2 weeks across the Atlantic during seizing, but couldn't do anything to protect it. Donald Trump has also confirmed this.
Vladimir call you after this tanker was seized?
I don't want to say that, but the fact is that the Russian ships, it was a submarine and a destroyer, they both left very quickly when we arrived.
Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha stated that the Russian missile strike on the Lviv region near the EU and NATO borders poses a threat to European security. Ukraine has already initiated emergency diplomatic steps, a UN Security Council meeting, consultations within NATO and the EU, and has also insisted on increasing of sanctions pressure, primarily on Russia's oil revenues.
Such a strike close to EU and NATO border is a grave threat to the security on the European continent and a test for the transatlantic community. We demand strong responses to Russia's reckless actions. There needs to be more strong steps against Russian tanker fleet, and the US is right to take action here, as well as Russia's oil revenues, schemes, and its assets. Not only in the EU, but across the world. Andriy Sybiha, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine on X.
Putin shows his real aims and cynical attacks Ukrainian capital during freezing conditions. The Russian launched a combined attack on Kyiv last night. The enemy used more than 200 drones and more than 30 missiles of various types. 5 people died. Russia hit residential buildings. It was the most painful attack for critical infrastructure of Kyiv. The mayor of Kyiv, Vitaly Klitschko, said, "Almost half of Ukrainian capital is without power, heat and water supply." With Oreshnik strike, Russia is also trying to divert attention from Putin's fails, both at the front and due to the US seizure of tankers from Shadow Fleet. Every time the US and Ukraine approach a crucial decision point, negotiations, new aid packages, or tough sanctions against Russia, the same scenario unfolds in Moscow. Putin appears in military uniform and starts talking about new seizures, which always turn out to be nothing more than the dictator's imagination. What Putin's real aims are in the next story for you.
After the summit of the Coalition of the Willing in Paris, Kyiv hopes to move on to preparing a broad meeting of leaders already in the United States to accelerate the negotiation process and elevate it to the political level. In Washington, they also speak of noticeable progress in the talks. According to the U.S. President's Special Representative Steve Witkoff, the basis of a sustainable peace should be not only security guarantees, but also long-term economic commitments from Kyiv's partners. In addition, it is the United States that should lead the monitoring of the ceasefire regime.
A lot of progress began first in Geneva. We made tremendous progress there. We moved on to Berlin. Lots of progress happened there. And as President Zelensky identified, we had a very compelling meeting in Mar-a-Lago. And we look forward to more progress as a result of everything that's occurred today. We think we're largely finished with security protocols, which are important so that the people of Ukraine know that when this ends, it ends forever.
But such progress has only intensified the Kremlin's aggressive rhetoric. Thus, the signing of the declaration of intent to deploy multinational forces in Ukraine after a ceasefire and conclusion of a peace agreement caused a real hysteria in the Kremlin. The foreign ministry of the aggressor country stated that any units of the coalition of the willing in this case will be considered legitimate targets for the Russian army. All this says one thing: Putin has no intention of ending the bloody war.
Putin still dreams of subjugating war in Ukraine, which is not achievable. If you look at the map of his military gains last year, for which he paid tens of thousands, possibly over 100,000 dead soldiers, at this rate it would take him decades to conquer Ukraine. But this is the trouble with dictators, that once you've been in power for 20 years, there are very few people who will tell you like it is, and people only bring in the good news.
Putin will continue to pose as a peacemaker with one goal: to drag out the peace process and avoid further sanctions. True, the new package of restrictions Donald Trump has already approved. This was reported by Republican Senator Lindsey Graham. The bill, which provides for colossal tariffs for buyers of Russian oil, is planned to be put to a vote in Congress next week.
This will be well-timed, as Ukraine is making concessions for peace and Putin is all talk, continuing to kill the innocent. This bill would give President Trump tremendous leverage against countries like China, India, and Brazil to incentivize them to stop buying the cheap Russian oil that provides the financing for Putin's bloodbath against Ukraine. Lindsey Graham, United States Senator, on X.
In addition, the U.S. Department of Justice is ready to bring criminal charges against members of the crew of the oil tanker Marinera detained in the Atlantic Ocean for sanctions violations. American media write that Trump seems to have finally understood Putin's tactics and has moved to creating systemic problems for the Kremlin. At the same time, threats by State Duma deputies to sink American ships and strike Europe with Oreshnik, as well as the Russian Foreign Ministry's demand to stop illegal actions, look like mere hot air.
To Russia, which had formally asked the United States to stop its pursuit of the vessel, the move represented the latest affront from a president who has not shied from crimping Russian interests when it has suited him. The episode showed how Mr. Trump's efforts to court President Vladimir Putin of Russia while also asserting American global dominance are rife with contradictions and pose risks for both sides, from a publication by the New York Times.
Another proof that the Kremlin has no intention of ending the war is the fake about the alleged attack on Putin's residence in Valdai. Analysts believe that in Moscow they will look for any pretext, including far-fetched ones, to exit the negotiation process or at least slow it down as much as possible. Reported by Irina Yusupova, UATV News.
Overnight missile strikes were reported in the Russian cities of Belgorod and Oryol, leaving more than 500,000 residents without electricity and heating, according to local authorities. Belgorod Region Governor Vyacheslav Gladkov said key infrastructure facilities were damaged, causing a citywide power outage. In Oryol, Regional Governor Andrei Klitschkov confirmed damage to a municipal infrastructure site, with disruptions to heating and water supply across several districts. Ukrainian officials have not confirmed responsibility for the strikes. Earlier, President Volodymyr Zelensky said Ukraine would respond to Russia's continued attacks on Ukrainian energy infrastructure. The General Staff released a spectacular video showing the destruction of Russian air defense systems worth $250 million. In just 1 month, operators of the 412th Separate Unmanned Systems Brigade turned 8 Russian air defense complexes into scrap metal. Among them were Tor and Buck systems, as well as a rare Vitez radar station. It is capable of automatically detecting up to 100 aerial targets simultaneously and engaging up to 8 of them. The cost of this system is approximately $130 million. Ukrainian drones struck the 100th arsenal of Russia's main missile and artillery storage network in the Kostroma region. Russian local authorities have not provided detailed information about the incident, as usual. At the same time, local residents reported hearing explosions throughout the night near the military storage site. The facility had been targeted before, including a previous drone attack in May 2025. These large storage bases hold significant ammunition reserves before they are distributed to frontline depots, making them critical targets whose damage directly affects Russia's ability to sustain its military operations. The attack underlines Ukraine's continued ability to reach deep into Russian territory with long-range drone operations, hitting key military infrastructure far from the front lines. That's all for today's News Digest. Stay informed, stay critical, like the video, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. See you next time.